Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday service with the Atheist Reformation. Joining me once again is my co-host Harry. How you doing, Harry?
I'm doing pretty good. I do want to admit that last week I was feeling a little not so excited. I think the quarantine finally got to me, and I was a little, dare I say it, relieved that we postponed. I wasn't feeling up to it.
No, I completely understand, and apologies to anybody who was looking forward to a show last week. For that, I'm sorry. At some point, we may try to do a double upload to make up for that. Other than that, if y'all are okay with it, we are too. As always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. All articles are going to be linked in the video description down below, and you should follow us on Facebook. You know, all that fun stuff. If you'd like to be on the show, have a show idea, come across an interesting article you'd like to see us cover on the show, of course, you can send all that information to theatheistreformation@gmail.com. Check that pretty much daily. And in that regard, I'm still waiting for Robertson Jennings to reply back.
You could also add me if you share a lot of like religious themed stories on Facebook, just because I spend way too much time on Facebook.
Yeah, you really do, Harry. Anyway, but there again, I suppose we've all got to find something to do during the quarantine and whatnot. So our first story today is coming to us from a Happy Science update.
Oh, yeah. Hey.
Yeah. This one's rather interesting, and if by interesting you understand it to be mildly terrifying. And I wish that would go away. So we'll just do it.
I wish Happy Science would go away too, but...
True. Well, this comes from their political arm, the Happiness Realization Party. They want you to realize just how happy you are. While partying, apparently. I don't know. But no, all kidding aside, and this is from Business Wire, a Berkshire Hathaway company. And this becomes a little bit more important a little bit later on as we discuss this. So, back in 2016, there was a Happiness Realization Party demonstration that was held in Tokyo. And it was to call upon the Japanese government to strengthen national security and international influence to protect freedom and peace in Japan and Asia. For anyone who hasn't quite grasped it yet, Happy Science, especially their political arm, the Happiness Realization Party, or the HRP as we're just going to call it from here on out, is an ultra-nationalist group.
That's one way to say it. They're also just deniers.
Yeah, well, that's going to be covered in the Happy Science big
alert,
video that we're going to do. Yeah, spoiler alert, they... Yeah. Let's just say not good people. Ryu Huokawa is not a good person. And I hope he watches this someday. I actually hope he watches our little breakdown that we do of everything about them, because it'd be kind of interesting to hear what they have to say about it.
If he tries to sue us or something, if we're just like, but facts.
Yeah, exactly. But facts, and not even just but facts, but also, why would you sue me? You have more money than I do. You have a lot more money than I do. You're not gonna get anything from me. Nothing worth having, anyways.
He'll take the YouTube channel, and then every week we'll have to do Happy Science propaganda.
Yeah, no, that ain't gonna happen.
Court ordered.
Court ordered. That's fine. I'll make sure there's nothing specific in the court order. That way I can sit here and just do this to the entire video.
So
just,
basically...
Just shaking my head. It's like, no, fuck this guy. But anyways, what... I can understand they're wanting to protest. North Korea had just carried out a fourth nuclear test in January of that year, as well as a satellite launch experiment, so ballistic missile testing, all that fun stuff. You know, a lot of things that people don't want North Korea to have. And so it is understandable that people are on edge about the DPRK at this point in time. However, because of this demonstration and everything, the Berkshire Hathaway owned Business Wire posted the schedule details for the demonstration, which is something that you don't usually see in a lot of news stories. And when it comes to and about anything to do with something like that, there's generally a lot more than just something that is copied directly from their profile.
Yeah, it's a little weird because Berkshire Hathaway having Business Wire means that they would be interested in sharing news related to companies or giving exposure to companies. But that
Right.
Happy Science Corporation is distinctly different than the political arm of the Happy Realization Party. So they're,
True.
in effect, giving political coverage and religious coverage to a cult because of whatever attachment Berkshire Hathaway has. And I don't know if Warren Buffett himself is aware of that. But
Probably not, but also looking at it further, when it talks to the about, this has got to be ripped straight from their party profile.
yeah.
All it says, it was founded in May of '09 by Ryohu Okawa as part of the Happy Science Group to offer concrete and proactive solutions to the current issues such as military threats from North Korea and China and the long-term economic recession. HRP aims to implement drastic reforms of the Japanese government, thereby bringing peace and prosperity to Japan, and advocates that Japan should offer a model of a religious nation that allows diverse values and beliefs to coexist that contributes to global peace. So, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot packed into that little paragraph. And all of it is propaganda.
I mean, what would be the equivalent of this today? Would this be kind of like if
In
Forbes
all
ran-
honesty, I hate to draw the comparisons here because I know what your political leanings are and whatnot.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, this is what it would look like if the Tea Party was run by Scientology.
Yeah.
You have to admit the parallels are unflippin' canny.
I mean, I can see that. I was gonna give a comparison of like if Forbes started running like puff pieces about demonstrations that the Latter-day Saints were doing,
Yeah.
and it's like, I guess it's business related. I mean, because of Taco Bell and Pizza Hut, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe at the very least. But either way, it's a little goofy.
Yeah. Well, be careful who you give free publicity to, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, and people are going to find out a lot more about that once we get our video series finished for Happy Science. I'm going to have to get it with like a wireless headset or something because I keep smacking the earbud out of my ear.
Because we are very aware of who we're giving free publicity to, which is why we're very careful about exactly what kind of publicity we're giving.
Precisely. In long story short, HRP, they're a bunch of ultra nationalist, xenophobic bigots.
Yeah.
Or at least as far as how their platforms show up, to how I understand.
Oh, that's going to be a fun video. Okay.
Oh, it really is. So let's go ahead and move on to our next story. And this is going to be a bit of breaking news here. This comes out of Uttar Pradesh in India. This is a very short piece, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. This is something that is a very recent development. In fact, this information was just published yesterday, and they updated it a minute later. So either there was a typo in there or something was going on. So, in New Delhi, an important development over controversy surrounding azan, which is the Islamic call to prayer. It's generally done from the top of one of the parapets of a mosque, and a very common way of doing that nowadays. Instead of having a crier up in the tower, they use loudspeakers and megaphones. It's mostly common in Islamic countries, though there are other countries in which that takes place as well. So there was a court case in Allahabad on Friday, so this would have been May 15th, so 2 days ago, allowed recitation of the call only by a single individual, however, prohibiting recital of the same using a loudspeaker during the ongoing COVID-19 lockdown. So the lockdown is apparently uh, not quite entirely worldwide, but a lot of major in highly populous countries are engaging in lockdowns because of this crisis.
Yeah.
Notably, the development comes in the wake of the recital of the Islamic call to prayer being banned by the Gazipur District Administration in Uttar Pradesh during the ongoing holy month of Ramzan, or as we understand it, Ramadan, I think. Yeah, Ramadan, which is being observed during the lockdown. The plea in the High Court was filed by BSP MP from Gazipur Afzal Ansari. Um, Hearing the petition, a two-judge bench of the court, including Justices Shashi Kant Gupta and Ajit Kumar, observed and concluded that the recitation of the call to prayer by human voice cannot be hindered under the pretext of violation of the guidelines issued by the state government to contain the spread of COVID-19. So, it seems as though there are some religious freedom issues that are being debated in other countries as well during this quarantine crisis that a lot of countries are dealing with. The bench, however, added that no citizen should be coerced to hear anything which he does not like or which he does not require, since it amounts to taking away the fundamental right. And that's a really interesting take on
Yeah,
the
it's kind
topic of
of
that.
opposite of what we have in America.
Right. Um, and so, but there again, we're the only country that actually has an enumerated right to freedom of speech that
Yeah.
negatively, that restricts the way of saying it. Oh, hey, we got some comments coming in. Beach Price from Ontario, Canada. So thanks for tuning in. Glad to see an international viewer popping up. That's pretty awesome. And KCA Randy also, thanks for tuning in as well. I'm glad to see you guys here. Hey, glad y'all are here. So anyway, it's an interesting take in that here in the United States, the way we interpret freedom of speech is that you're allowed to say essentially whatever you want that is within reason, as in there's not a call to action in that it incites violence. This goes back to a Supreme Court case back in 1969, if I remember correctly. I believe it was a guy who was a member of the KKK or something like that. Anyway,
Yeah, you can't tell someone to go kill someone.
right, precisely. You can't say that. You can't do things like that. But you're allowed to speak whatever you want in the public square to however many people are willing to stand there and hear it and listen to it. However, we also don't place restrictions except in certain local situations that may have noise ordinances and things like that, where you can only have sound or projected speech over a certain decibel level for X hours out of the day.
Yeah.
But you still have the ability to do it. This is saying that essentially you can't do that unless, the dude wants to stand there and scream at the top of his lungs, but he can't use a megaphone. That's a little odd. So
It's a little. Yeah, I was going to say, just to clarify for the international viewers,
sure.
We have some weird laws where it's like you can't basically tell lies that endanger people. Like you can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater because it could cause a riot or a stampede. You can't basically defame someone in a way that could cause them damage unless what you're saying is true, especially if it's in print. But other than that, you're pretty much free to say whatever.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we have such hilarious problems with people saying, "Well, this is quote unquote, this is the way I see the world. These are my facts." I'm like, no, facts are facts. But anyways,
I guess,
anyways,
yeah, on this issue, like I would totally agree with the whole thing of you can't really stop someone from praying, or you shouldn't be able to, at least from my perspective. If they're
well,
going to pray,
this isn't even
let them pray.
stopping someone from praying.
Yeah.
This is, um, to some degree, stopping someone from calling people to pray.
Well, they said that one person can do it. I agree with the court on that. One person can
Mm-hmm.
do it. The part that I would even almost agree with is because I've heard some of these before. They can be pretty loud. Like the sound can extend for like
Oh
half a
yeah,
mile.
oh yeah.
So
They can get really really loud. I mean, they use some pretty crazy speakers. Um, on some of the PA
it,
systems. You listen to some of the videos or watch some of the videos from places like Saudi Arabia and Riyadh and Pakistan and places like that. Those speakers can be heard for miles because it's almost a radio broadcast just with sheer volume.
it's like almost like an air raid in terms of volume.
Yeah, I would say that the speakers that they use are pretty much on par with air raid sirens.
So I guess I can get that noise pollution. Like you don't
Yeah.
have the right to extend your message over hundreds of acres in
Now,
order
also
to.
keep in mind, this is also happening. This is a court case that happened in New Delhi.
Yeah.
So, this is one of the most heavily and densely populated cities on the planet. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
noise pollution is going to be a big issue. However, it's potentially going to create a slippery slope over there. And I think it's
Yeah.
something we need to pay attention to and kind of keep not necessarily on the back burner, but at least in view of where you can see what's going on, watch it, keep an eye on it, and see how this story develops.
The two things that I find really weird about it, and, I'll be done with it, is one that why did why was COVID-19 the reason for this? Like it just seems weird that because people are at home, they're going to sleep at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and 6 a.m. in the morning, and we need to be
Yeah.
respectful of that. It's a really weird reason to have the case. And then the second thing is, I I really don't understand the grounds of not allowing multiple people to pray in unison. Like if you have a bunch of people going to church and they're all singing or praying at the same time and their voices are amplified because it's 100 people there, I don't really understand stopping that. But I don't know if it's because they don't want the 100 people together in the same area spreading the disease, or if it's because 100 people was amplifying the sound large enough that that's considered hurting the city around it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it all has to do with coronavirus or the spread of COVID-19 or anything like that at all. Although I guess because Ramadan is such an important thing in the Islamic faith, and it goes on for an entire month, and I think there may be an increase in the number of calls to prayer, maybe during that time, and it would happen every single day instead of on their version of the Sabbath, which is common over there. So maybe that's the case. I'm not sure. Or and
I
because
might,
that would also have an increase in the number of people gathering.
I
That's
might
still
be getting.
speculative, but still.
Yeah, sorry about that. I
No.
think I might be getting my Islam theology off or culture off, but it might be because during Ramadan you fast during the day, and so the loudspeakers for the prayer are they signal when it's okay to begin eating again and when you need to stop eating.
Mm,
But that might not be accurate.
I don't know. If any people who are of Islamic faith are aware of the particular brand of Islam that is practiced in New Delhi or is most common and would like to chime in at some point, um, feel free to drop a comment, send me an email, put a comment on this video after we're done airing for the day, whatever you'd like to do. and give us a bit of background information on this, or what that would mean to you specifically. I think that would be an interesting thing.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to our next story. This one's the doozy story. This is the one that nobody wants to deal with, but it's something that I think needs to be shared because
Yeah.
the way I see it, this is some bullshit of epic proportions. And
Yeah.
in the interest of good taste, I have just simply labeled this story Judicial Bias. Because that seems to be exactly what's going on here. So we're going to zoom in a little bit. Make sure everybody can see.
So I guess to preface this, because the article doesn't really talk about it too much, but the Church of God is the denomination that they're referring to.
Yes.
And that is not one of the mainstream denominations that most evangelicals might not even be aware of.
They're almost entirely based in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's a pretty enclosed, very specific group. I wouldn't quite call it a cult, but it's not mainstream by any means.
Right. So, pastor sexually assaulted his 14-year-old daughter for 2 years, gets shorter jail time for being a man of God. Now, if we just read the headline here, it sounds really bad. Unfortunately, I have to say that in reading the rest of the story, I feel it's actually worse.
Yeah.
So I wish I could say that the headline was the worst part.
It makes more sense as you read it, but it gets
True.
even worse.
Yeah. So a former pastor from Tennessee was convicted of raping his adopted teenage daughter. The usual sentence for a crime like this is a minimum of 72 years. Minimum. However, 41-year-old David Richards, it's in print, so I'm not doxing the guy, was given only 12 years of prison time by a Knox County judge, giving the sexual predator less than a quarter of the actual sentencing for a crime of this nature. Was attributed by the judge to the man's religious leadership as well as the outpouring support he received from his parishioners. As for his victim, who chose not to remain anonymous, believes he is still likely to hurt other young girls. I'm going to skip over the tweet for now.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw my body away, is what Amber Richards said as she delivered her victim impact statement in court. Now I'm going to pause here for a minute. A victim impact statement. For those who may not know exactly what that is where victims or the victim's family, in the case of an incident where the victim has lost their life, are able to come before a court. This is after the individual has been convicted. This is after all of that has been done. When it comes down to the judge to actually make the decision as to what to hand down within the guidelines of the law as a punishment for the crime that the individual commits, or that the convicted individual commits. These victim impact statements can influence whether or not a person is going to receive parole after a certain period of time, whether or not they're going to be tasked to serve the maximum amount of time allotted, or some other permutation in between.
Yeah, these are not used in the trial to determine guilt.
No, because it would color the image. What's the word I'm looking for? It would taint the process of actually having a trial. Instead of it being about the facts of the case, it would be about these impact statements. So that's why they're used after a conviction has already been established. So she often says, she's also said that not a day goes by that I don't, in some way, think of what he did to me. And she says, I firmly believe, if given the opportunity, he would victimize another young girl. Amber stated that she had been a victim of her adopted father's, sexual abuse since she was 14 years old. He continued to abuse her over several years until she finally decided to go to the authorities. Richards was found guilty by the jury on 9 felony counts. This included rape, incest, and sexual battery by an authority figure. So these are 3 separate types of crime that are being committed at this point, and he's convicted on 9 counts.
So,
and if I remember correctly, in what I looked and what was able to be viewed, there were 9 felony counts brought in total, and he was convicted on all counts.
Yeah, so we're not talking about 72 years for one act. We're talking about 8 years per a sexual assault.
Yes. And this is a minimum, not a maximum. If they wanted to go max on the dude, he'd be serving life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Right.
Richards took advantage of his position as Amber's sole guardian, and this was reported in the Knoxville News Sentinel. Amber has since been able to get in touch with her biological parents, who were also present at the court's proceedings in support of their daughter. There were a half dozen others who joined them in support of Amber. As for the rapist, over 30 people had turned up into the court in support of him. I find it impossible for me to believe he's guilty of this, says David Thompson, who shared ministry duties with Richards at My Father's House Church of God in Lenoir City. He says his business needs him, his family needs him, our church needs him. Thompson added, hoping the convict would get a smaller prison sentence. Richards also maintained the facade of innocence. The lenient sentencing was in spite of the presence of overwhelming evidence against the pastor. When Amber went to the authorities, she told them where they could find DNA evidence at her home. She also informed them about texts from Richards talking about the relationship, taking their relationship to the next level. According to the Daily Mail, on arriving at the scene of the crime, the authorities found that the sheets were suspiciously stripped bare and the pastor's phone had been factory reset. Fortunately, they were able to collect seminal fluid from the girl's bed frame. It was found that the fluid had a DNA profile matching that of David Richards. He claims that he says, I stand before you convicted of crimes I did not commit. I simply believe the system just erred in this case, Richard stated in court. He took the stand in his own defense and claimed that Amber was a defiant teenager who falsely accused him when he tried to impose strict rules for his children. He says, I'm not sure why I'm here, but I assume it's for his purpose. Capital H his, so God. Richard said, maintaining a position of innocence throughout the trial, even in the face of conclusive evidence. Judge Steve Sword meted out a range of charges, most of which are punishable by probation alone under state law, except for sexual battery by an authority figure. That carries a minimum of 3 years in prison, reported Metro. Sword then cited Richards' work as a pastor and the Bible study group he began in jail as factors calling for a lenient sentence. Amber, on the other hand, is trying to move on with her life now. She said, I didn't really do this for me. I did it so it didn't happen to anyone else, so nobody's in the same situation as I am, especially kids. They don't deserve to go through things like that, she said. If I have to be the one to make sure that it never happens again, I don't mind doing that. So, I would say, to quote Steven Crowder on this one, what a piece of shit.
Yeah. So there is something for those of you who are watching and you're like, oh, but I think that he's still innocent. That has no bearing as to the story.
No, the fucker was
Because
convicted.
the jury convicted, okay? Whether it's a wrongful conviction or not has absolutely zero bearing on what we're talking about. The person
Also,
was convicted. Go ahead.
also on top of that, um, when you look at modern court cases nowadays, a lot of people, their only exposure to the criminal justice system is what they see on television, especially things like Law and Order and other, primetime crime dramas and all that other nonsense. That is not how the vast majority of criminal courts work, especially in the United States. So when you go into court, when you actually go to trial, discovery has already happened. There are no gotchas, there are no surprises. The prosecution has already laid out everything they have against the defendant, and the defense has laid out everything they have in support of innocence before even going into that courtroom. So,
And if they don't and they have something in their back pocket, that's usually a mistrial.
or at the very least, it's booted from the official record and not allowed.
Yeah.
But yeah. So continue on,
So,
Harry.
yeah. So the point is that here we're talking about just sentencing. The crime has been determined that it's been committed by him. According to the jury of the peers have determined he's guilty. Now, going against his constitutional right to a trial by jury, the jury has determined he is guilty of the charges, which have a minimum sentence. The judge is interjecting his own belief about this person by lowering the minimum sentence because he thinks that, well, he's just a really nice guy that started a Bible study. And he clearly, from his quote, is using his personal ideas of this person's religious faith and devoutness as a way of changing what the person's sentence should be under the law. That is interfering with the law on behalf of the religion. Now, that's one of the reasons I wanted to point out earlier. This is not one of the mainstream religions of someone that you would probably associate with this denomination. You probably don't know anyone that goes to one of these churches because that's not a group that's widespread that most people would have involvement or interaction.
Right. But yeah, this dude is a complete piece of trash.
And just because I rarely get the opportunity to read this Bible verse, do you mind if I read one?
Go ahead.
Okay. So what does the Bible say should be done with someone who tries to take care of someone as a part of the church and then causes them damage and ultimately causes them to have a compromise of their faith? Well, Matthew chapter 18, verse 5 and 6, whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were fastened around your neck and you were drowned in the depth of the sea.
Huh.
So, yeah, if you do terrible things like this to children that you're supposed to be protecting, it's going to be very, very bad for you.
All I can say is to the way I understand things in criminal courts, and especially this rat bastard and that rat bastard judge, who, by the way, is
Judge's name.
His Judge Steve Sword.
Okay.
So,
Judge Steve Sword from Tennessee.
And the reason why I'm pointing this name out, Judge Steve Sword, I am not telling anyone, do not talk to the man, do not engage with that individual. Don't even acknowledge that he exists unless you have to go to his court. In which case, be respectful. He's still a judge. That being said, if Tennessee is like Texas and judges are elected to the bench, vote that rat bastard out.
Yeah, we've probably got
When
an
he comes
election
up for
coming up.
re-election, remember this and vote the rat bastard out.
Yeah, I don't know if if his is going to be this year or if it's going to be the next cycle, but it's either going to be this year or 2 years from now. You've got time to do your research, figure out what's going on, and possibly raise enough attention to run against him,
Yep.
because that's
And I hope
ridiculous.
somebody does. So, anyway, let's move on to something that's a bit more cerebral and a little less rage inducing.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about the psychology of belief. And this comes from a Psychology Today article that was written a couple of years ago now, August of 2018. However, it is by a Dr. David Ludden, or Ludden. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that, but we're going to go with Ludden. So, why do people believe in God? For most people in the world, the answer seems obvious. They believe it's self evident that God exists. From the point of view of the believer, the really puzzling question is how anyone could not believe. And yet, as University of California at Irvine psychologist Brett Mercier and his colleagues point out in a recent article, there was once a time in the prehistory of our species when nobody believed in a god of any sort. Our evolutionary ancestors were all atheists, but somewhere along the way they found religion. And so we're back to our original question: why do people believe in God? As is common practice in evolutionary science, Mercier and his colleagues distinguish between ultimate and proximate causes. An ultimate cause explains how a behavior evolved in the first place, while a proximate cause outlines the conditions in which that evolved behavior will be performed. Consider, for example, birds flying south for the winter. The ultimate cause of bird migration is the increase in survival and reproduction experienced by those who seasonally moved to warmer climates where food was plentiful. In contrast, the proximate cause is the decrease in daylight hours, serving as a trigger that it's time to head south. So the ultimate cause is what is the end result, what is the ultimate benefit to that species for engaging in this activity. The proximate cause is they recognize the decrease in daylight hours, the days are shortening, and also probably the decrease in temperature as well is a bit of a hint too. So they leave. Now, religious belief is some sort is nearly universal as a feature of humanity. So there's quite likely some ultimate evolutionary cause that explains it. At the same time, not all people are religious, and furthermore, the forms of belief among the religious range widely. So we need to understand the proximate causes for this variation. In their article, Mercier and colleagues outline several ultimate and proximate causes for religious belief. Fully modern humans arrived on the scene about 250,000 years ago, and until quite recently, they all lived hunter-gatherer lifestyles. In these primitive societies, the men hunted, fished, or scavenged for meat, while the women gathered fruits, roots, and vegetables. They lived in small groups of around 100 to 150 people because this was the largest population that the surrounding terrain could support. So, all in all this is jiving so far. I know Harry disagrees, he's a creationist, but we all appreciate him being a good sport.
I'm sure
No,
there might have been some Homo sapiens out there that all this is true for. I won't argue that.
I would say if it's true for one, then it must necessarily be true for all, since it speaks of a population. So an entire species. So yeah. Anyway, still, these groups were considerably larger than the societies of primate species, which tend to number in the few dozen range. Furthermore, humans are more capable of cooperation than other primates. I mean, I would agree for the most part, especially since our population is vastly larger than any other primate species on the planet. However, at the same time, we do exhibit a lot of these same issues when it comes to things like tribalism, us versus them mentality, and things like that. We love to find differences by which to categorize and marginalize. And we continue
Unfortunately.
doing it today. There's always going to be some version of in and out group with humanity, I think.
You know why that is, right?
Huh, why is that?
The Tower of Babel.
No, that's not why.
I read it.
Yes, in the Goat Herder's Guide
All
to the
right, you can
Galaxy.
continue now.
What?
I said you can continue now.
Uh-huh, that's what I thought. Chief among these is a sense of agency. As tool users, humans quickly developed an understanding that they can intentionally cause things to happen. The nut cracked open because I smashed it with a rock. The apple fell because I shook the tree. I won the fight because I stabbed him in the face. You know.
Is that really in there?
No, it's not. I added it.
Oh, okay.
So, Humans then apply this sense of agency to interpreting social interactions. That is to say, we not only believe we have agency, we also believe others have agency as well. And so that's where it comes down to things in philosophy like solipsism or brain in a vat, are we in the matrix, and this, that, and the other. That's a whole big, giant philosophical rabbit hole that we are, unlike Alice, not going to go down today. Thus, we judge the actions of others depending on whether we deem them to be intentional or not. This is true even in our criminal justice system, like that asshole in the last story. We have intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or with criminal negligence, at least in Texas.
Yeah.
Intentionally meaning that you designed it to happen and you wanted it to happen and you tried to make it happen. Knowingly means you didn't do anything to stop it and you knew it was going to happen. Recklessly means you knew what you were doing was wrong, but you didn't quite care that it would actually do anything outside of yourself. And then with criminal negligence, in the state of Texas, the best way I can describe that is how one of my criminal justice professors described it, and that is aggravated dumbass.
I feel like that's going to be a catchphrase for the show.
Aggravated dumbass?
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that. I could see that. You know
Put
what?
it on the t-shirts.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, everybody, you saw it here first. The Atheist Reformation public service announcement for the week. Don't be guilty of Yeah, that's the public service announcement of the week. Don't be guilty of aggravated dumbass.
We need to make those shirts now. It'd be the perfect gift because you could buy one and be like, oh, get it? It's a great quote. Aggravated dumbass. And then, like, for someone you don't like, you could buy them the shirt and then they could just walk around and have everyone be like, oh, don't mess with him because he's an
aggravated dumbass. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Alrighty, so continuing on with the story. We can easily forgive the person who accidentally steps on our foot, but we really need an explanation and an apology if someone purposefully treads on our toes. I mean, yeah, because that's just being an asshole. It's like, why are you stomping on my foot, dude? In fact, we're rather hypersensitive about other people's agency, inferring intention where none existed. For example, when someone cuts us off in traffic, we generally assume that they did it on purpose. That is, knowing full well how dangerously they're driving, rather than supposing they looked but just didn't see us. We are quick to assume that people act purposely and discount the extent to which people's behaviors are shaped by their current circumstances and limitations. Having seen more than one motor vehicle accident and seen interviews of motor vehicle accidents, when I used to work security many moons ago. Yes, in the event, in the moment, it's always, that son of a bitch hit my car. And the other person's like, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. And so it's always that fun bit of like, well, y'all figure it out. Yeah. And they say it to people, and they would say it to people like me, who all I can really do is pull out the security phone and call the cops. So it's like, I don't need your
Or
statement.
what happened to me not too long ago
Oh?
was someone hit my car, and I was like, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, it's cool. We'll just wait for the cops to deal with it. I'm gonna sit in my car. Get your insurance ready." And
Yeah.
they're like, "But can I just go?" I was like, "Nope. No, you can't
Exactly.
just go."
There's a difference between responsibility and intentionality. So, because of hypersensitive agency detection, we also have a tendency to infer intentionality in natural processes or inanimate objects. Beliefs in water sprites and woodland spirits, specters and spooks, ghosts, demons are ancient and observed in every culture around the world. Because the natural world is complex and acts in mysterious ways, we detect agency all around us. So, I'm sorry, people. Those little rings of mushrooms that you find in the woods going out for a walk, that's not a fairy circle. That's just spore dispersal. Sorry to burst your bubble. There's no magical unicorn that's going to come and fart rainbows for you. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
If you eat them, there will be.
Not the ones that form in the circles, though. Unless you're
Oh.
like going after, you know, the ones like what you see in the Mario games, the red ones with the white spots on them. Fly Amanita? Yeah, that'll get you some freaking unicorns. It's called hallucinogens. I mean,
I do not know any of them firsthand, only through academic research.
you just keep telling yourself that, Harry. We all know. It's okay.
Academic.
Yeah, sample size of 1. Experimentation
Uh,
U.
I don't know. Whatever the sample size for that movie was. Are we doing plugs for comedians, or no?
Oh, are you talking about Shane Moss?
Yeah,
The psychedelic movie?
Psychonautics.
Oh, Psychonautics, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Psychonautics, starring Shane Moss. Yeah, go watch it. It's a good movie.
Anyways, by the way, if you think that you, an intelligent human being living in modern society, are free of such superstitious nonsense, you need to ask yourself, have you ever begged your car to start on a cold winter morning? Or have you ever complained that your computer has a mind of its own because it doesn't behave the way you want it to? We
Have
tend
you
to
ever hit the monitor instead of resetting it?
right? Have you ever looked for the any key when it said hit any key to continue?
Then you are an aggravated dumbass.
Anyways, or if it says press any key to continue when you pull out a sledgehammer. I mean, I pressed any key.
Very
I
aggravated.
pressed all of the keys. Anyway, we tend to automatically detect agency even in inanimate objects whenever the situation is unpredictable and out of our control. This kind of animistic thinking, which is the belief that supernatural agency inhabits the world and can influence events, is a universal human trait. Such thinking is common in children, and as adults, our animistic thinking is shaped by the norms of our culture. Animistic beliefs are also common in hunter gatherer societies, but what they don't have is organized religion. So, it's like having an imaginary friend when you're a kid, or when you're playing pretend. You picked up a stick and it's magically a sword, and all that kind of fun stuff. Or this like awesome little part of a birthday present that I got yesterday, and it's a panda bear Deadpool. Imagining that this is somehow alive and can actually do something and has agency. Yes, it's amazing.
That is awesome. And by the way, happy birthday.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, it even came with a little bowl of ramen, chopsticks and all.
Nice. I
Yeah.
just realized something though
What'd you
by
realize?
listening to this article.
Hmm.
People that blame diseases that are completely unrelated to a vaccine
Uh
and
huh.
people that blame chemtrails
They're
are modern
applying
day.
animistic thinking to the vaccines. Yep.
Yeah. I never realized that anti-vaxxers and chemtrailists were basically the same people that were like worshiping trees and like praying to a rock.
Yep. Hey, but see, here's the thing. At least the rock could do something. You could smash someone over the head with it. You could break open a melon or something. Um, you know,
They make great pets.
I'm pretty sure that that's a result of psychedelic drugs from the 60s.
You could throw like you can throw them and tell it to stay, and it'll stay.
I'm pretty sure psychotropic drugs that became prevalent in society in the late 50s and the 1960s are what gave rise to the pet rock. I'm thoroughly convinced of this.
I actually know the full history of pet rocks, and it's disappointing to say the
Oh, I'm
least.
sure it is. I'm sure it is disappointing. But at the same time, it's nice to think that sometimes. But we'll get into the history of pet rocks at another time. Some 15,000 years ago, humans gradually began adopting agriculture. At first, humans domesticated a few animals and tended gardens to supplement their hunting and gathering, but eventually, all but a few societies around the world shifted solely to farming and herding. Agriculture and can support many more people per acre of land compared to hunting and gathering, but this comes with a cost. Yes, these are called agrarian societies, if anyone wants to know the actual term for it. As long as our group sizes were small, we had the psychological mechanisms to deal effectively with the members of our community. If you live in day in and day out with the same 150 people, you get to know them really well. But if your numbers are now in the thousands or tens of thousands, most of the people you interact with on a daily basis are strangers. We see this today. Thus was life in the first cities that arose thanks to the food surpluses that agriculture yielded. So at this point, we see cultural evolution starting to take place. Human existence depends now on cooperation. When we lived in small groups, cheaters are punished by other members, and they quickly learn that they have to get along. But in anonymous societies, it's actually really easy to take advantage of others, as there's not really a way for the rest of the group to punish those who take advantage of the system. The solution was to invent ever watchful gods who will punish cheaters for us, and thus organized religion grew hand in hand with the rise of the city state. Makes sense. Fast forward
Yep.
a dozen millennia, and here we are living in a technologically advanced society driven by science that tells us the world moves according to the laws of physics and not the whims of spirits or deities. Yeah.
It's a cool
Nevertheless,
story.
I mean, it's called facts, but
No, I mean like
nevertheless,
it seems to check out. Yeah, it's
yeah, yeah. Nevertheless, religious belief in one or more gods that watch over our actions and judge us accordingly is quite common. At the same time, religious belief has dropped precipitously over the last century, and here we need to look at its proximate causes. So, Mercier and colleagues divide the proximate causes of religious belief into three types: cognitive, motivational, and societal. So, we know what cognitive is. That's gonna be internal for the most part. Then you have motivational and societal. Societal is your pressures being put on you by society. Motivational is what is motivating you to do that, or why. What about this motivates you to perpetuate it?
I really don't understand motivational as separate from cognitive. Like
So,
I get societal.
well, okay. So here's the thing: you have a cognitive. This is why you believe. Motivational is what motivates you to spread this, what makes it a benefit to you.
Oh, okay. So it's like the what's in it for me for religion, as opposed to just your like logical, intellectual ideas of
Precisely.
why.
And then
Okay.
societal is you want to fit in, or most
Yeah.
people
So
want to
like
fit
I
in.
know that I need to eat food so my body doesn't die, but I'm going to eat a hamburger because I like how it tastes. And
Hmm.
I'm going to go to McDonald's because that's what the commercial on TV told me to go.
Precisely, yes.
Okay.
Your motivation to eat the hamburger can be that you're hungry and can be that you need to sustain yourself, but the motivation can also be I like that over, say, grabbing a hunk of celery or
Yeah.
picking up a potato, you know. And then, of course, yeah, the societal pressure, commercials, going to McDonald's versus Burger King or Dairy Queen, something of that nature. So the way I see it is cognitive in this is how we arrive at that, how people arrive at the idea of a God existing intuitively. It's how they think their way into belief.
So either the mythology or the logical debates that one has with oneself, or
Hmm.
the presuppositionalism or the apologetics of it.
Right. Well, that can also be
Okay.
motivational, but that can also be societal. So it's more um, at the end of the day, the only person that can convince you of something is yourself. You have to want to be convinced of something.
Whereas motivational to me for religion,
Hmm.
if I were to apply all this to me, like that would be more like the fellowship of being with other people, the opportunities to participate in
Hmm.
service oriented activities that I don't
Right.
get the chance to organize on my own. And then I guess the societal kind of goes hand in hand with the motivational because it has to do with the culture that you're a part of,
Yes.
but it goes further back to your parents and your friends that discussed it when you were growing up in your formative years, not so much what you currently desire as for a sense of belonging.
I'm gonna use our new buddy Ryuho Okawa to explain each part of this. So the
Okay,
cognitive so the cognitive
you
part,
mean El Cantare,
yeah.
the
So the
one in the
cognitive thing is he likes the idea of being the physical manifestation or reincarnation of this all powerful being. So of course he's now convinced. The motivational is he wants to be the most important person in the world and he wants to get rich doing it. So he starts telling a bunch of other people about this, that he is El Cantar. And then societal is, well, he's created his own society, so that societal pressure of conformity goes away, and it becomes more about how he influences society on his own, and also how that society now supports him by praising him, worshiping him as the incarnation of a deity, giving him money, lots and lots of money.
is it Cantare or Cantare? Because Cantare sounds awesome.
I don't know. I just go with El Cantar just because it makes him sound a little bit dumber. I mean, not that he needs any help, but
It's El Cantar.
El Cantar. Anyways, moving along. One cognitive factor is an analytical thinking style. People who tend to act according to reason rather than intuition are also less likely to believe in God. Perhaps relatedly, we also see a tendency for people who are higher in intelligence to hold agnostic or atheistic beliefs. In contrast, people who are high in what's commonly called emotional intelligence, that is, the ability to easily discern the emotions and motives of others, also tend to be more religious. Of course, it's exactly this ability to read others' minds that led to the rise of religious beliefs in the first place, hundreds of thousands of years ago on the African savannah. There are also motivational reasons. People who are socially isolated tend to have more religious faith, perhaps allowing them to feel like they're not truly alone, even though they are. Likewise, people facing death also more likely to express faith in God and an afterlife. The old saying that there are no atheists on the battlefield is no doubt true to a large extent. Furthermore, faith in God increases when situations become uncontrollable. So, for all of you basic people out there, this is where Jesus takes the wheel.
That's insulting.
I know. Is that because you're basic, Harry?
No, it's because I've said Jesus take the wheel before. I mean, not when I was driving, obviously. I mean, I'm not Carrie Underwood, but
I don't know. I guess you just don't have as much faith as Carrie Underwood then.
your Deadpool idol is a false god.
You're just mad because I made a point. You need your aggravated dumbass t-shirt now, Harry.
Yes.
Man, you opened that door and careened through it. All on your own, too. So another motivational factor is self-enhancement. If you live in a society where religion is prized, it's in your best interest to say you believe. Insert any political candidate here.
I think it's funny how when they were talking about emotional and intellectual quotants for religiosity, they basically just described like the D&D wisdom and intellect modifiers.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, wisdom and intellect are separated because they're two different things.
But how, wisdom would go into emotional intelligence pretty much and would
That
link
and
you to.
charisma, probably, yeah. But anyways, I'm sure there are plenty of doubters in the pews at Sunday services, though none will probably admit it. The author even admits that he was one of those for most of his teenage years, and it's not uncommon to hear stories of priests or pastors who have lost their faith but continue to preach because it's the only way they can make a living. Yes, there's the Pastor Project or something like that that American Atheists runs, or the Atheist Alliance runs, that helps deal with pastors who have lost their faith and help them deal and cope with that, because some of them are working towards transitioning out of religion. Others who stay in because it's the only lifestyle they know. It's the only way they can sustain their living at that point because they've been in it for so long.
I was not aware that there was a charity that actually focused on that.
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. The Clergy Project. That's right. Beach Price commented there. The Clergy Project. And it was either the Pastor Project, something like that, but yeah, the Clergy Project. Yes, that's actually a non-profit organization with American Atheists, if I remember right, that works with pastors who have lost their faith.
It's just interesting because I was familiar with the Until There Were None project, and it's like it's really similar in how they're described, just different things that they're focused on.
Finally, there are societal factors that influence the degree of religious belief within societies. As a general rule, religious belief is considerably lower in developed countries compared with the underdeveloped world. For instance, Japan has one of the highest standards of living in the world, but only 4% of its population actually claims to be religious. Traditionally, Japan was a Buddhist country, and religion played an important role in the daily lives of the Japanese until after World War II. A similar trend has occurred in Western Europe, which many social scientists now characterize as post-Christian. The United States, with its high standard of living and high religiosity, is the glaring exception. However, as Mercier and his colleagues point out, Japan and Western Europe have universal health care and extensive social safety nets as opposed to the United States. The Japanese and Europeans know their governments will come to their aid in their hour of need, but the laissez-faire attitudes of American society make people's futures less certain, and the belief in a benevolent God more attractive. Although
There's that American exceptionalism for you.
Although many people in industrialized societies have abandoned traditional organized religion, many of them still confess to some sort of spiritual belief, such as a life force or divine spirit that pervades nature and humanity. As societies become affluent and egalitarian, perhaps people perceive less need for a benevolent God to keep watch over us. Organized religion may no longer be needed in such societies, but it is still human nature to perceive agency in the complexity and unpredictability of the world, even where there is none. So, yeah, interesting. And for anybody who wants to look at the actual paper, there it is right there. Belief in God, why people believe and why they don't. Current directions in psychological science. And that was an online publication. So, there you go.
I'm going to make an argument that has nothing to do with any scientific research, but
Okay.
I think that one of the differences between America and the other countries that have a high standard of living would be that in America we see more nature around us, so we also are probably more likely to hold on to some of the ideas of religion. And as a Christian, I feel like we see God's creation more often instead of the creations of man. So we still have room for God in the
Mm,
church. And I think in highly, highly urbanized areas, like certain parts of Japan, certain parts of Europe, that it's just all they're seeing around them all the time is the creations of man.
I think it more has to do with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Um, the more a person's needs are met, the less they need to look for outside help regarding it.
Hmm.
In fact, let's looking through the yeah, Beach Price. The more your needs are met, healthcare, etc., the less you need to pray for help. So yeah, that's
I think that if your needs were met, it would give you even more time to look at the ultimate higher purposes in life, though, and how many people, once their needs are being met, are actually doing that.
mm, well, when they're looking at those things, they actually go and do different things for the most part. They engage in more artistic explorations and things like that, from what I gather.
Yeah,
So let's go through
I'd
and
like
scroll
to
through the.
see what I'd like to see, like what kind of artistic endeavors they're doing, because it just seems like the more that people have their food and shelter taken care of, and they have no more wants, they just post more TikTok videos.
I mean, some would argue that that is an artistic venture in and of itself, even though some of us, like myself, would consider it vapid, ignorant, and annoying.
Or a secret spy network. I'm
Yeah,
just
they
kidding. It's
did
not that
recently get in a
secret.
lot of trouble for that by essentially posting or selling metadata from children
Yeah,
for ad money. Yeah,
that has
gotta
nothing
love
to do
that
with
one.
religion. It's interesting, but
Mm,
it has
has
nothing
nothing
to
to do
do
with
with
the premise
religion.
of this channel, but yeah, not gonna touch that one. Oh hey, our friend Jessica Lauber in the comments says yes, aggravated dumbass it'll be. Says she'll get to work on it. So that's actually a friend of ours outside of the live stream. So yes, I do hope that she works on that. I'd love to see a design for that we can put on a T-shirt, or to uh, quote Mike Myers from the Love Guru, put that shit on a T-shirt. That was a. It had some good zingers in there. Movie was largely dumb though. Let's see. My little brother chimed in. Hi Matthew, thanks for tuning in. Um, okay, so Beach Price says they know it's mostly Sunni in India, but not sure which school of Sunni because there are a couple of different schools within that. Um, a good question about our yeah pedophile pastor asking, wonder if he had molested a son, would it make a difference? Perhaps longer jail time. I mean, given the puritanical nature of the state of Tennessee, I could see it working in exactly like that. I could
I
see
think
that
if it was
happening.
a biological, I think if it was a biological child, it probably would have been less likely to give leniency. The fact
Honestly,
that the child was
was adopted.
adopted, and
Yeah.
by the time that the court case came around, she was either 16 or 17. So they
Mm-hmm.
said it started when she was 14 and lasted for at least 2 years.
Yeah, and then at one point it was tried to be claimed as statutory and not full on sexual assault. Was how somebody tried to
Did
play
they
it down at some
claim
point.
that they claim that in the defense?
Uh, if I remember right, it wasn't in this. It wasn't in this story, but in something else I had read about it. Yes.
That completely nullifies the whole "she made it up" thing. If you're claiming it was statutory, that means that
That
you
didn't say
did
that
it.
it was. It didn't say that it was used as a defense. Um,
Oh,
like in court, just that he didn't know why it wasn't being looked at as a statutory issue instead of a rape and incest issue.
because it's your family.
Yeah. And again, I go back to my initial statement. What a piece of shit. And Beach says, "Oh, good point. Biological child might have made a difference." That's very true. Bio kid could
It's
have made a
unfortunate,
difference.
but it's true.
It is
Yeah,
unfortunate. You're right. Let's see. Keep scrolling through. Beach comes back, says he's double the authority figure, a parent and as a man of God, quote unquote.
that's twice as bad right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you're the parent and you're the preacher, you got double the responsibility.
yeah. So then I suppose he needs to have his minimum doubled from 72 years to 104.
I would not disagree with that. I
Excuse me,
will say that
144.
according to the words of Jesus Christ, though, if this guy were to tie a stone around his neck and commit suicide, however bad you feel suicide is for someone, and whatever pit of hell that sends them to, would be, if you are someone that believes in mortal sin,
Mm.
that would be way less bad than what he's going to have happen to him.
The whole preaching of suicide as a sin, in large part, didn't come about even in the Americas until the slave trade got really big, and the evangelization or proselytization rather to slaves in the South as they were.
I did not realize that was when it took off,
Mm-hmm.
but that makes sense.
The reason why is because so they were preaching and telling these people um, that yes, there is a God, there's heaven, and all this stuff, and you'll get there eventually. You'll get there when you die. All of a sudden, suicides among the slave population start skyrocketing. Soon after
Yeah,
that, they start preaching, hang on, suicide's a sin. You got to do your time on planet Earth before you can get the reward in heaven.
because it really doesn't make a lot of sense for Protestants to focus on it as much, since it's primarily a Catholic doctrine of mortal sin.
True. And also, Beej does raise an interesting question, or an interesting point, in that molesting children actually isn't even considered a sin in the holy books, not even a crime.
Uh, yeah, if it is.
Where?
I mean,
Tell you
I don't
what,
have the verse off the top of my head, but the
find it
verse
and
that I
bring
read
it up.
earlier was,
Find it and bring it up
if,
next time. That one didn't
I
say
can look
anything
that up.
about sexual assault or anything like that. Just says that if you put a put
Took
a
action, choice of faith in God.
right.
Yeah, then that's terrible. But I can find something specific about
Okay,
sexual assault of a
I would
child.
I would like to see that because especially Old Testament, and yeah, God had no problem with that.
Well, I think the thing is that in the Old Testament, adulthood was considered different. You got to. That's one of the things to put in context is that
That still
13, 14
doesn't
years old.
justify the custom wholesale slaughter of an entire population of people and the purposeful taking captive only of virgin girls and then killing everyone else regardless of age.
Yeah, and I'm not discussing that right now at all.
Yeah.
I was talking about just the age thing. I'm pretty sure there's
Hmm.
something in there referring to someone who hasn't hit puberty yet.
Well, anyway, we will have to discuss that at a later time. One more comment that I think is rather interesting from Gregorian. Thanks for tuning in. The ancients thought the world was so much more interesting than it actually is. I don't know. I'm not even going to go that far. I would honestly say that, for me at least, because of all the advances in science and the advances in technology, to me, the world is even more interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's what we can do with it. What we've been able to do with just this one random blue marble floating in space. We've been able to do all that we've done with just this.
A long time ago, like they were fascinated by there's dirt around me, there's water at the edge of the dirt, and there's monsters and ghosts that live in them. And now it's like everything has so many intricate details and subdivisions of what it is that can interact with each other. And then there still might be monsters inside of the ocean.
Yeah.
Not to mention space ghosts.
Coast to coast.
Coast to
I knew where you were going with that. But anyways, I would like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in this week. I greatly enjoyed it. I loved seeing the audience interaction. I hope to see you all again next week at the same time. I am talking to a couple of different people who I'm hoping to have on the Discussions with the Theist show. So I'm hoping to have an episode or a live show to air this coming Saturday. So we'll see what's going on with that. I'm still waiting on a couple of emails. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to read any of these articles in their entirety for yourselves, links are in the video description down below. And we'll see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget the what will eventually be the first t-shirt for sure, as well as the PSA of the week. Don't be guilty of aggravated dumbass. Everybody have a good night.